Hello, Dr. Carter, and thank you for joining me. The English students chose you as the faculty spotlight actually at the end of last semester, but it's been postponed, and I will ask that question real soon. Um, but congratulations.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I have some student submitted questions as well as some questions that I ask every faculty spotlight. And the first one just to get it out of the way is how long have you been teaching and how long at WCU specifically?
I first began teaching when I was a graduate student at the University of Delaware in 1990. And I began at Western when I guess that would be August of 99 after I finished my dissertation. I was a contingent faculty member then, which means not on the tenure track.
Nice. Um, so quite a while. And
Quite a
speaking of
while.
teaching, um, you were one of the, I think, 17 recipients of the 2021 Awards for Excellence in Teaching, and that is what we've been holding off on so that we could talk about that with you. So how does it feel to be one of those recipients?
It is really quite lovely. It is one recipient from each of the 17 UNC campuses. And so it's a big award that way. And I was very happy about it. It's one of those things that makes you feel sort of externally validated. I should add, Western has a lot of really good teachers and relatively few major teaching awards. And what that means is that while, that we hope the people who get them deserve it, I love to think I deserve it. It means that there are a whole lot of other people who deserve it just as much, possibly more. And there's an element of, luck or kind of difficult choices in all of those. So, I'm grateful for that as well. You can be a really, really, really good teacher and never win one of those awards. And it's something to bear in mind, for those of you who have professors who maybe have not won them but are still really good faculty.
Yeah, that's super exciting, and congratulations again on that. Before we get into more difficult questions or in depth, I suppose I got a couple of random questions from some students of yours. Um, for instance, what is your favorite movie?
I do not have one. I like a lot of movies. I dislike a lot of other movies. One that maybe people may not have seen or heard of, which I would highly recommend, is a science fiction movie from a couple of years ago called Fast Color. It is phenomenal. Um, I would strongly encourage people to go see that one.
Right. And the other question, before they get more into your career, is: Are you a dog or a cat person?
I like them both. I have had them both. Right now, I have a couple of cats.
Nice. What are your cats' names?
There is Rufus and there is Micah. They are the survivors of a group of three cats that had color names. Orca was black and white, Rufus was red, kind of orange ginger, and Micah flecked with gold. She's a tortoise shell,
Oh, cute.
mostly.
Yeah, cats can be a little difficult.
Yeah, they're kind of mean.
The next question, now we're getting into your writing, and you are a poet. So one of your students wants to know, how long have you been writing?
I am fortunate to have been writing for about as long as I have been able to write. I had a family that was very into words, definitions, reading books. And so my mother has some proto poems that I wrote as a young kid and on up through high school and so on. So a long time. I am 53, going to be 54 in a month or so. So, call it 45 years.
Wow, a lot of experience, and it makes me wonder, do you ever compare, like you said, your mom has kept, some of your first poems, have you ever compared those poems to what you had published?
No, it's better not, you know. Very youthful efforts, and once I get the chance, I will probably burn all of them.
Fair enough. Who are your top 3 favorite poets?
I could not give you three. There are an awful lot of poets that I like in different kinds of ways. For your question, I grabbed three almost at random: Lucille Clifton, Marge Piercy, and Jane Kenyon. And but there are so many others.
Yeah.
It
If I
really, yeah.
gave you enough time, you could probably just list all of your favorites, right?
I don't know if I could. It would take a very long time.
All right. Well, moving on then to teaching. Well, almost. If you could choose only one memory to sum up your college experience, what would it be?
That was another one where I really I could not choose just one. I can give you a memory. My best buddy Sonda and I got better acquainted with her, I think probably in our junior year. And we were the friends who would sit up all night arguing and fighting and talking and fixing the world and all that stuff. And in some ways, that's the quintessential St. Mary's experience where I went to school, where you meet people you did not know and you forge different kinds of connections with them.
Very cool. Are you still in touch?
Yes.
Thanks. College is a good place for that, I think.
Yeah, you know, if you're lucky, it really is.
Hmm. And what inspired you to become a teacher?
I did not really plan. I was not a good planner in those days, and maybe I am still not. We didn't have the kind of career advising in those days that you do now, or if there was, I didn't know about it. So I went to grad school as the path of least resistance because I thought I was a good student and I figured I'd go do some more of that. And it didn't occur to me at the time that that was leading to a teaching degree or what I was going to do with it. I was very short sighted. Um, but so you do teach when you're a grad student generally, it's how you pay the rent.
Mm.
And I did not like it so awfully well at first. But when you goof it up, you know, as you've probably seen yourself, it's the results are painful and humiliating and agonizing and all that stuff. So there's a lot of incentive to work at it to get better. And the more you work at it, you know, the more interesting it becomes and the better the connections that maybe you have with students, which is really kind of the good part of the job. And although I got better than I was to begin with, thank God, I didn't get really better until I went back to school here at the College of Education and Allied Professions for a teaching license in 2002. That was when I was on my way to working in English education.
Mm.
And who would have thought, you know, those teacher educators know quite a lot about teaching. And I learned buckets in those 2 years. And I think that was when I really kind of came into my own as a teacher.
Yeah. And now you're recognized as one of the excellent teachers, so you must be doing something right.
It's a funny world.
Yeah. Um, and um, your spouse is a teacher in the English department and has had a faculty spotlight done as well. What's it like to work in the same department as your spouse?
It is mostly great. Very short commute, you know, a lot of things in common. Never run out of things to talk about. We know all the people each other works with. Yeah, mostly it's just excellent. And for academics, that is actually like winning the Publishers Clearinghouse. Academics don't work in the same department with their spouses. There just aren't that many jobs. The job market is hugely dismal. It is more dismal than it was when we got into it. And this could not have happened if I had not changed fields from American literature to English education.
Wow.
That's how I was able to be hired here on the tenure track. And even then, it needed a phenomenal piece of luck as well.
Sounds like you're just got luck on your side then.
You know, it is like almost anything else. Yeah, you have to work. Yeah, you have to make some smart decisions. Changing fields was a very smart decision.
Mm.
But you've also got to be lucky. You've also got to be privileged. Like anything else, it is a thing that is easier if you're a white person. It's easier if you have some generational wealth. You know, I can't think of any field of endeavor where privilege like that is not a factor, and it
Mhm.
is always something to remember. To kind of take that in a slightly different direction, my spouse and I do not have children, and while that's, you know, problematic in some regards, it also makes life incredibly easier doing something like this. A lot of women particularly, who are either are or want to be on the tenure track, are much challenged by the obstacles posed by being the primary caregiver for one or more children. It is huge.
Yeah. And you do still publish poems, many of them, uh, which one of them, I think it was, mm, last spring, I want to say, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
You published a ode to the anus,
I did.
and a student wants to know why you wrote that particular poem.
Well, you could probably tell them because you were in the class where we read Sharon Old's book, Odes.
Mhm.
So, you know that odes are kind of interesting, and that one of the distinguishing features of the ode is to celebrate that which is unappreciated, unloved, treated as vile, and so on. Um, but I like poems. I was getting interested in odes about that time, which is why you all had to read all those
Ah,
odes.
okay.
And so, you know, I like poems to be kind of lighthearted, but not lightweight. I like
Mm,
them to be both funny and addressing bigger questions. And that one addresses some fairly big questions. You know, most cultures, most religions believe that food is holy, and rightly so. Eating is holy, eating with friends is communion. Why do we feel differently about excretion? Why is the other end of the digestive tract inherently lowly, vile, desacralized, corrupt? And there's not any real great answer for that. How do we decide what is sacred and what's the opposite of sacred? And is anything except cruelty really the opposite of sacred? So that's why I've got all that stuff in the poem about monks and monasteries, to kind of combine those questions, and to also give a shout out to a famous haiku of a fellow called Buson, who he wrote a poem, a little haiku about the old abbot fertilizing the withered fields with his droppings. But so it's, you know, it's a kindergarten, you know, fart joke poem, but it's also serious, and that is my favorite kind.
it's very fascinating, that's for sure.
She said tactfully.
And what are you working on right now? Or someone else asked something along the same lines, what are you publishing next?
I have got a couple of poems coming out in North American Review this summer, most immediately. I've got some coming out in Robert Lee Kendrick's new journal, 12 Mile Review. Um, Trying to think, I haven't made a list and kept it handy right. I mean, I have a list, but it's not handy right now.
Mhm.
Big projects, as you know, Dr. Gastel and I are translating a 33,000 line long Middle English poem into modern English, John Gower's The Confessio Amantis, Confessions of a Lover.
Mhm.
And we have a contract with the MIPS, the Medieval Institute Publications at Western University, for that book. We hope to have it in their hands before the end of the year. We've done a first draft of the 33,000 lines. We are now about a third to 40% of the way through a second draft. But my spouse, Dr. Gastel, he is doing the kind of heavy lifting with the notes and annotations. That is a beast of a job, and it's taking a long time.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and that's pretty cool too.
yeah, it's interesting work. And I'm working on a fourth full-length collection of poetry, which uses metaphors of witchcraft and magic to consider again how we decide what's sacred, and how we think about women aging, usually not very well, and global climate change. So there's this kind of thread of fire with the burning witches and the menopausal hot flashes and the global climate change and everything. And also with how we kind of interact with non-human life. That's been a thread of my work for a long time. And just in case you all aren't bored yet, I am also working on, well, I haven't really begun to work on it yet, but I'm looking at a book of lesson plans for teaching poetry, because not only do a lot of students hate and fear poetry, their teachers do, which is, how it gets passed on. Our one teacher teaches kids that poetry is about reading 500-year-old Shakespearean sonnets and looking for allegories. And so their students come away scarred and kind of clawing at their face and convinced that they'll never understand poetry. And then they become teachers and they do the same thing. It's very much a generational cycle. And I think having some lesson plans right out of the box that could really, really help with that. Mm-hmm. So I've got scholarly development leave next spring. It is predominantly for that project. And I'm hoping to kind of bring in threads from some of our graduates, the ones who are teachers now, who really do love to teach poetry. There are some, and get some of their lesson plans out there, for other teachers to use as well.
Very cool.
So
a lot on the horizon.
Keeps me off the streets.
Yeah.
Out of trouble.
And speaking of poetry, someone wants to know, what is the most important thing for someone who's interested in poetry but not very good at it?
Keep reading and keep writing. You need both, and those are how people get better. You may get a Keats or a Dylan Thomas or someone who's born great. Most of us aren't. We get better incrementally by practicing, just like you do anything else. If you know somebody who's really good at making tables, nobody suggests that God strikes them with a lightning bolt and they're born knowing how to make tables, right? Never happens. And it's not that way with writing either. It really helps to have a great foundation and have people reading to you from the day you're born, but it is basically practice. And for people who maybe read a poem and say, I don't understand it, I'm never going to understand it, this sucks, I hate the whole thing, go read somebody else. There's something out there for you. If you don't like one thing, don't read it. Go read something else and see if you like it better. And if you find a poem that you really like, maybe you read more by that author. If that author offers a class and you can afford to go take it, maybe you do. Bit by bit, day by day. It's a marathon.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it reminds me of what you said earlier about like when you get the chance, you'll probably burn all of your earlier work.
So as to give the impression, that I was, God just tapped me on the forehead. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is another question that I ask every faculty member that's spotlighted. What advice do you have for students?
The advice I came up with was for what are called traditional students, come to college when they're 18, leave when they're 22 or 23. So this won't be very useful for non-traditional students, college students. But I would really encourage traditional students to kind of make the most of the time they have. If they can afford an extra year and, rather than taking 18 or 22 hours a semester trying to get through on time and get out of college, I would encourage them to take the extra year. If there's people will tell you these are the best years of your life, and I think it would be very sad if that were the case. They'd all be over by the time you were 22. That would suck. But they are kind of unique years. And even though people say, I can't wait to graduate, it's going to be so much easier from here on out, which, by the way, not true. Or, geez, this is also stressful, I don't have time. I would really encourage them to try to find time to do something different. Go do the river cleanup, listen to a reading, watch a film, stay up all night talking to someone you don't know very well. Really, join a student group that you can't imagine joining. there's never going to be more time than there is right now. I promise you that.
Mhm.
So it is a good thing if you can to make the most of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice, and I wish I had that advice when I was in undergrad because I didn't do a whole lot, and now I wish I had, but I don't have the time that I need for that.
I wish I had done more of that as well.
Mhm.
I feel like I could have done so much better if I had known.
Yeah. And that was the last real question, but is there anything else that you'd like to share for your time in the spotlight?
I would like to give a shout out to the students I work most with in the secondary undergraduate English education program, the proto teachers. They are really amazing students in most cases in all kinds of ways. They have a drive and a fortitude and a passion for their craft and a work ethic that I really could not have aspired to when I was 22. And so, and their teachers, their host teachers, where we place them in the public schools, generally equally amazing. So I get to work with some really remarkable people, and I am so thankful for that. So, hello, English Ed. Good for you.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you and getting to know more about you. Thanks for joining me, and congratulations again on your award.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.